Live now. Please
Oh,
start.
okay. Okay, thank you, Maria, for that announcement. Hello, everyone. Firstly, happy Friday and happy weekend to all of you. Welcome to another episode of VC the Venture Capital TV from La Token. On a Friday, we have another special session where we have two guest speakers today. It's going to be very up close, personal, and cozy session today. We're going to discuss about sustainability, green finance, investments into that space because of the pandemic. We realize that is the need of the hour, and we should be focusing more on sustainability from that point of view. So, okay, thank you, and I would like our two speakers to start with the introduction and talk about the investments, the recent investments that you have done in the space. I like to start with my neighbor from Singapore, Calvin. Calvin, please start. Please introduce yourself and talk about. Let's know what your views on the investments and what's headed to, and what's happening in the space. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Sunny, and thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. Like with Sunny, I'm in Singapore. Today, it's actually almost the day to the eve of our National Day. So it's a long weekend here. So for friends who are in Singapore, happy National Day in advance. It's a pleasure to be here to be spending this Friday
National Day. I forgot. Happy National. Sorry to call Happy National Day.
Happy National Day.
Thank you. So by manner of introduction, my company is Eden Strategy Institute. We are actually a strategy consultancy firm focusing on social innovation. And that space of investments is something that we work on from many different directions. For us, sustainability takes on a broader perspective. So we care about not only environmental sustainability, but also social sustainability and certainly economic sustainability as well. For us, as a company, strategy consulting company focusing on social innovation, there are several different practice areas that we go in to push on sustainability. And these could range from areas like smart cities, the emerging middle class, even areas like the third sector. Increasingly, we are seeing interesting trends when it comes to the public sector as well coming in. And I'll go into more detail shortly, as well as healthcare and education. So we care very broadly about the broad sustainability theme. When it comes to sustainability as well and sustainable investments, it's been an exciting time to say the least. For all of us, I think we are going through an almost perfect storm and a storm that is arising out of course, COVID-19, but I think has nice after effects to go into the broad ecological and environmental sustainability area. What do I mean by that? For us, what we see is that these days people can see, for example, what the role of business and government should be, what the role of society, what's actually important. It's maybe not about consumption all the time. It's maybe not even about growth. It's about sustainable growth. It's about social relations. It's about the planet that we're living in. It's about the healthcare and safety of our loved ones. So some of these themes are also coming across in many of the companies that we are looking at, the governments that we are talking to, in how they play out into the sustainability landscape. We see that even at the individual level, people can see that they don't actually need to consume that much. They can see that, in fact, the things that we thought were not possible before, like having, imagining that we would need to travel to be able to meet. Now, for example, Sanjay, in the past, if I wanted to meet you, Sanjay, I would have to make quite some effort to make my way over to Dubai to have a chat with you. Now, it's business as usual for us to just get on a call anytime, right? And we make things happen. So things we once thought were impossible are very much possible. And that same idea has come about with the range of drivers that we're observing. So I'll share a few with you as in a way, opening remarks for what I see to be the perfect storm. Firstly, we see that from the government standpoint, because of increasing citizen expectations of the role of government, that we observe in many countries, Japan, Germany, certainly China, obviously here in Singapore, even in the US, there's as heavily observed, I would say, in the presidential elections over there, a shift in the policy towards more green type investments, government policy, and this is gradually going to lead to the reduction in the cost of green stocks, green enterprises. We see regulatory developments out of MiFID. They are also driving this kind of change. From the point of view of the buy side, firstly, the government bonds themselves, the pension funds, These are all putting pressure on and also the family offices, putting great pressure on hedge funds and other asset managers to demand more ESG type investments. They are the bankers, they are getting into it, coming out with very nice product structuring. For example, things like ESG ETFs, for example. So that's also some great growth. There are many surveys that have been talking about how global investors are planning to increase their ESG ETF allocation, even here right now in 2020. Green financing is coming about. Standards and regulations is driving this. And on the corporate side, the companies are increasingly, big, from starting, especially from large corporations. Many companies are going about taking corporate actions, reporting more transparently, allocating and deciding their strategies, products and services, their core products and services to embracing the circular economy. Consumer sentiment, as I mentioned before, post-COVID, the kind of responsibilities and expectations is heading in this similar direction. And from a technology sophistication standpoint, more and more new interesting technologies like the hydrogen economy, which is very new, but also there's maturation of technologies such as electric vehicles, solar, and things like that. They are all coming on board as well. So there are many exciting things that we are seeing. There are, yeah. I have lots more. Should I keep going? I would love to hear from Sanjay as well. And we can keep it a two-way conversation.
So yeah, Calvin, that was my point. Sorry to
not at all.
Thing is, I'll be asking you more questions as we go along. We have 1 hour slot and we've got 2 speakers, so obviously you're going to talk more. But I think, yeah, sure, we'd like to hear your insights. Sanjay, please tell us what you're doing with Phoenix Group and yeah, what's going on.
Yes. So as I was telling you prior to this call, recently I transitioned to LT Foods. And LT Foods is a company which is headquartered in India, and it's a food company, consumer food company, and with a very prominent brand called Daawat Foods. And Daawat Food is a brand which is not only based in India but also in Middle East, Europe, and America. There have been a lot of other consumer food products under this brand, and there is a lot of noise, as Kavin was saying, about investment into sustainability. But I'm sorry to say that people are also beginning to get bored by using the word or listening to the word sustainability without actually understanding as to what sustainability is. And it not only happens with the industry professionals, but also amongst the investors, that they definitely understand what they want, and they're very clear about that, and they're investing in it. But they're also beginning to feel a little bit disappointed that the investment that they did last year and a couple of years before are not really, they would like to do the business today. And it clearly tells us that there is a very likelihood that 2 years, 4 years down the line, they are going to be slightly disappointed or ashamed of their actions of today. So that means that while they think that they are doing a wonderful job, but you will have not one, but maybe 1,000 Gretas coming out and pounding us with a lot of steam as to we are not doing enough. So that means what? That we have tons of money to do green investment and sustainable investments, and we think that we are doing a wonderful job. But when we go and measure it 2 years down the line, we would say, oh my God, the world was not really better. What has actually become worse? So that's where the situation comes that we really have to A, think out of the box, B, challenge our assumptions and work together in a team with multi-stakeholders. That is easier said than done, because when we say multi-stakeholders, means trusting somebody whom you and your teams have been hating yesterday. Because in the marketplace, we never think of working with our competitors. We sort of in a business like ours, for $1, we compete and kill each other in the marketplace. So how is it that we bring the competitors to come together in one place and say, hey, in this place, there's too much of water which has been taken out, and I, as a company alone, whatever best I can do is not enough. We have to come together as an industry and solve the water stewardship issue of this problem. So now, when we get them into the room, the entire world community starts to question us that are they going to now form a cartel? So that means tomorrow the goods and services will be even more expensive. So we have to follow the Chatham House rules in that room, that we are working together only in the pre-competitive space, a space which has never been explored at all in the past. And we do not discuss the pricing. We do not talk about the market issues and trying to hoodwink the market players and trying to exploit the customer. We only talk about those issues for which we need to work together as stakeholders. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying right now, that the problem is huge, and prioritizing is a very, very tough ask. We think this is the priority, and 1 year down the line, we are proved wrong. Like, for example, can you imagine in the month of January, late January, all the world leaders, they were in World Economic Forum. They were talking about some other problem, whereas the problem called COVID was already born. It has already hit the headlines, and we were trying to focus on something else and not this. So this is the kind of scenario which is happening year after year after year after year, that we realize that we try to solve some issues and we see that the employees are causing havoc to their neighbors in their factories, and there are the issues about the misuse of their powers for their neighbors. And when a woman gets raped because of the misconduct of an employee in a particular factory, the woman cannot even enter the factory gates because there are very strong security guards. They have not written outside that how to lodge the complaint. There is no board outside about the redressal officer, and people are summarily pushed into the legal system, which is very slow in developing countries. So it is as good as justice denied. So this is just one of the small little problem I'm trying to mention here, that we would have to come together and find out as to what are the priorities, and within the priorities identify how we work together as a team, as a multi-stakeholders. And having said that, we fix the target. Today, what is happening, thanks to some of the consultants and thanks to some of the investors, we have got such a huge list of measuring how much greenhouse gases emissions we have reduced, how much carbon footprint we have reduced, that to do that kind of an activity is such an expensive ask. I need an army of people to actually measure whether I've done better or worse. So all our energy is going into those areas which are actually not making any life better. But because investors want to prove to their original LPs, limited partners, that yes, there is some positive thing which has happened, and they make it so difficult. And then another investor comes with another set of ask and another set of questionnaire, and third one forces the company to do another set of things. And you expect a company to do so much in such a short time, as if the world was not existing yesterday. So I think there's a total disconnect. So what the company does, it will prepare a report which when it goes to investor cannot make any head and tail out of that. He picks up that report and straight away throws it into the dustbin, because he cannot understand as to what is written in the sustainability report, and this is not what he was wanting to do. So there is a total disconnect there as to what needs to be done, how it needs to be measured, and do we need to really measure so much? So that's where we have to come around each other and find those solutions, and then we will be able to really identify the real winners, those who are doing a very good work in terms of not only the greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon footprint and the other environmental degradation related issues, but also we pick up those companies which are actually the true winners, not only in the financial market, not only on the social aspect, not only on the environmental aspect, but also on the corporate governance side. That these are the companies which will actually truly tick in the long run, and they will not go out just on the small issues like corporate governance. So I would like to pause here, Sony.
Sanjay, I really like the energy you have, and I can see that you have that drive in you to change, to transform something. When you started off saying the word sustainability has been overused, I think everybody uses this word like, day in and day out. I've seen people are talking about sustainable goals, sustainable cities, and everything else. But I think you nailed it very nicely and explained it. Thank you so much. I'll come to you with more questions. Kavin, I was researching on you while Sanjay was speaking. I was listening to him and researching about what. So what have you done at Eden Strategy Institute? I mean, you've been there for such a long time, and you've advised so many executives and so many companies. Can you give us an example of a recent sort of maybe a success story and in investment? And why did you choose to invest in the startup, or why did you choose to be their advisor? I mean, some green stories.
Absolutely, sure. So I mean, there are many stories that I can quote, but if you don't mind, I love to just add a subtle point to what Sanjay was saying, and I appreciate that point very much as well. For us as consultants, we work oftentimes at both the ground up level as well as the top down level. Ground up meaning to say with the communities, with the enterprises, with their customers, and the people that are on the ground, the community, the stakeholders. And top down, sometimes with policymakers, sometimes with investors, and so on. When we do things bottom up, we can call it so-called Main Street. I absolutely cannot agree more with what Sanjay is saying, which is that it takes a whole village, right? We need an overall stakeholder approach. People have to come together, have to establish the standards, and so on. But at the same time, I wish to maybe just point out that the gap when we look at things top down. Now, in the past, I used to work at the stock exchange. And at a stock exchange, where essentially, you can characterize that in comparison to Main Street as Wall Street. So at Wall Street, what really happens is that the capital markets are much more used to be able to trade products which are very standardized. They want to have a standard price, they want to have a standard kind of instrument, they want to have standard trading methods and rules and things like that. So that's what allows for liquidity to happen. Now, on the standardization aspect for ESG, I think the challenge that we are facing globally is that there are too many multiple standards. Every house, every consultant company, every credit rating company, they have their own standards. And then what that gives us is a challenge where for the typical investor, when they're going in, they have to look at 3 or 4 different kinds of standards. And that itself is dovetailing down to, for example, when we help the government do some sustainability strategy for the fashion industry. So we're talking about large $1 million textile manufacturers. The same textile manufacturer that might be serving Nike and Adidas and Under Armour, for example, has to actually go through the entire sustainability reporting process, 3 separate different ones, just for each of the 3 principles that they're serving. And that's extremely expensive, and that makes it very untenable. So I think that's the first point, right? Which is that the degree of harmonization of standards, I think that's missing. So somehow we have to balance between having a comparable set of standards that allows for that liquidity, while yet at the same time allowing for what Sanjay has spoken about, the richness of the context. So how do you balance the two, right? And I think there lies one of the challenges. Now, when you think about what actually is going on there, the degree to which greenwashing happens, every other company that you look at now, if you go to their company, they'll talk about how they accord and they are applying themselves to the SDG. But if you look into their financial statements, and we have done this, we have analyzed the companies in and out, actually the entire S&P 500, for the materiality of all that they do. Even the top companies, when it comes to all the aspects of the top companies when it comes to sustainability, are primarily still, for example, heavily FMCG companies. They are heavily still a marketing, product packaging company, or power generation company, for example. Materially, they're still doing that, even though they have a separate ESG report that says that they are according to all of these different standards and things like that. So I think the aspect of greenwashing can be overcome if we are thinking very clearly about how sustainability can itself help to be a profit driver and not a cost driver. And I think that's the key transition that we need to take. So coming to what you were saying from a case study standpoint for us, some of the work that we do, I can't mention too many names, but some of the work that we do really involves looking at how, if you take a corollary of what has been very fashionable in the last few years, digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is not about having a website. It's not about having even an e-commerce portal. It's about having a fundamental rethinking of the entire enterprise, right? From its supply chain, the skills of the people, to its communities, to how customers interact with them, to how its partners connect with them, and so on. Now, what we've been doing is we've been doing something similar to that extent for sustainable transformation. So if you think about a factory that we are working with, it could be say a soft drinks manufacturer. Certainly, you could be thinking about on the front end of it, repackaging the products. You can be thinking about the factory operations itself, and the footprint in terms of wastewater management. But if you go more upstream, where it sources, if it's a tea company, where it sources its tea leaves from, the factory operations themselves, the kind of fittings, the energy sources that powers it. You can be thinking about the footprint from a consumer standpoint. When they're buying the product, what do they do from a circularity standpoint of the product? And you can take, for example, PET bottles, and you basically close the circular loop and have that feed back into reducing the operating cost of the feedstock, for example. Absolutely, as Sanjay said, you need to work with bottlers, you need to work with PET suppliers, you need to have the whole village in one overall harmonized system before you achieve this. But coming out of sustainable transformation, you will see that their costs are reduced, the consumers are much happier because they're much more loyal. And these days, there are many millennial consumers, and there are countless surveys that have been done that show that they much more would choose to work and buy from a sustainable brand. Employees are more motivated, and these days, most companies have issues, especially in the West, holding on to employees, even in the COVID situation. So employee loyalty is high, attrition cost is low, training cost is maybe lower, retraining cost because of that. You have supply chain, for example, because of the loyalty, you have lesser risk of supply shocks. So you have, in our research, we have found many drivers which are economic drivers coming out if you really approach sustainability as a fundamental transformation and not as a front-end label or as an ESG type label.
Right. Great. I mean, you touched upon digital transformation. I'm going to come back to you with a question around technology and sustainability.
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, I would like to now move on to Sanjay with his expertise now, because you just said, Sanjay, that you moved on to a new company in food. Is it only food, or is it agriculture as well? So can you explain your journey? Great. And can you explain your journey in this field? And because food, sustainability, agri-tech is a big part of this. So we'd like to know, what are you doing in the space, and what are the recent investments into the space, if any?
Yes. So I'm very happy to inform you that so far, food and agriculture as an industry, we escaped all the media attention and all the scrutiny and all the criticism, because we always felt, this is like holier than cow kind of industry. But then we understood that no, it's not so. Commodities like sugarcane, commodities like rice, the sector that I am in right now, I mean, we create quite a lot of havoc, So almost 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are caused by rice itself. So no more we can hide, behind the big polluters of coal and transportation and those sectors which were the big polluting sectors, and we were sort of escaping all this closer scrutiny. Now it is being understood that actually we need to do something about all these things which we have not looked at. And this is actually a welcome change. I wholeheartedly welcome this kind of policing which has now come in, and investors are asking different questions and difficult questions. And as some of the very beautiful points that Kevin talked about, greenwashing, and he talked about harmonization of various standards, and he also talked about the approach ground up as well as top down, and he spoke about that how some of the companies are talking about SDGs and how situation is different. But these are the same kind of companies. They will use all this new knowledge that consultants are providing to them to their advantage one more time. So they have used it yesterday and they will use it tomorrow. And now they will become more genuine. Now they will not be greenwashing. Now they will actually be implementing. Now they will actually be measuring all those things you want them to do, and they will do. But 2 years, 4 years down the line, you would realize that we have sort of created a different class of people altogether, those who have it. And then there will be a large majority who don't have it, who do not do it. So what we will realize that we have created sustainability as so much of a competitive advantage that people will get away with many murders along the way. So that's where the caution needs to be done. So what happens in case of rice or in case of agriculture sector, as your question that you are asking, Sony? Recently, we formed an initiative called Sustainable Rice Platform under the leadership of GIZ, UN Environment and International Rice Research Institute. So we said that farmers have to follow these sustainable good agriculture practices, and if they follow, then we will provide them, give them marks. So the marks are for reducing the food loss, marks are for including women into the supply chain, into the farming activities, marks are for not using children, marks are for reducing chemicals use, pesticide, fertilizer, marks are for doing the integrated pest management and not really the conventional method, so that we something like we bring dragonflies in that areas and dragonfly eats on those pests. So we have not used any chemicals and we have yet killed all the pests. So it's a very, very natural way of biodiversity unleashing on that area, the way it used to be earlier when it was all forest. So we are trying to find out that how we ensure that we reduce water and train all this to the farmer. And if farmer does that, so at the end of this, he has to follow maybe about 40 or 44 parameters, and he gets marks on everything. So once he gets marks, then he is qualifying if he gets 90 percentile marks. If the farmer gets 90 percentile marks, as a company like us, responsible company like Daawat Foods, we will buy that rice and we will be able to allow to put the stamp on the pack that yes, this pack has been produced in a sustainable manner. And we will go to the consumer and we'll say, hey consumer, don't buy from my competitor because he has taken 4,000 liters or 2,500 liters to produce 1 kilogram of rice. I have taken maybe 1,000 liters less. So if you buy my pack of rice, you are saving 1,000 liters of water, or some other parameters about sustainability. So right now there is no premium whatsoever for the sustainable produce, but definitely there is a premium for the organic produce because it's concerning our health. So we pay that premium. But if the millennials, you ask them that would you like to pay premium, they're a lot more right thinking people than people of my generation, because they are ready to actually reward. Such kind of young customers are actually ready to reward, right thinking people are ready to reward the efforts of companies and the farmers if there's something which is not there so much in for themselves, because they have realized that the future is not there if we do not take this difficult action now. So if there is a premium which is 2%, 5%, probably they will pay. But if we expect them to pay more premium, probably they will not be able to pay that and go back to their traditional products. So while there is no premium on sustainable product right now, you know that you face so much of haze like New Delhi does in Singapore, and all that is because of so much of burning forest in the neighboring countries like Indonesia, and all that efforts which are being done. And there are companies which are producing the sustainable palm oil, but there's no premium. So the customer does not know that I'm buying something which is sustainable and pays exactly the same price that he pays for non-sustainable palm oil. So consumer premium is not there. Investor premium is there a little bit because investors are under a lot more scrutiny and a lot more under pressure from their LPs to be giving the money to those who can invest, who can actually deploy those sustainable practices. So definitely companies are now beginning to move towards more sustainable ways. So there definitely very well laid down positive net movement towards sustainable methods. But how much that is anybody's guess, because the effort is a lot, result is small, and the problem is mammoth. So that means that uh, we are very, very far away from solving this problem. But definitely a positive momentum has taken place. And now companies are beginning to establish and set up such projects which are actually meeting those requirements. I have given you a very small example of just one commodity of rice, where either the farmer will reduce its cost, or the investor will reward, or the consumer will reward, or maybe the terms of trade itself will change. If we have the sustainable produce, we'll go to those importing countries in Europe and Africa or Middle East that do not allow the non-sustainable produce to come to your country. Or if there is an Expo 2020 happening in Dubai, we can go and convince the Dubai government to at least provide some preferential treatment to the sustainable produce which gets into the country. Or we go to Indian Defense Forces and say that at least you buy the rice for your defense forces or for your midday meal schemes in schools. At least those produce which is in your hands, you buy it, which is sustainable. So we will make sure that the regulatory support also comes around for those sustainable produce. So there will be a momentum which will build up by its own time, which will be in favor of sustainable produce. So it will make damn good sense to set up new projects which are more sustainable. So this is a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Sanjay. You brought back memories. When I was in UK, I probably had bought Dawat rice. Thank you so much. But I think you touched upon really good points in terms of traceability, like something which is like you have different brands of rice on a supermarket. I mean, you almost pay the same price and more or less the same price, if I remember correctly, and there is no differentiator over there. So in terms of sustainability, sustainable rice, I think where I am going is how technology, especially the blockchain technology. I mean, next question I can ask Calvin, and then I can go over you as an investor. So like when you are investing into a startup, be in the food industry or be it in anything to do with finance or food, when the sustainability aspect comes into play. So with technology, what are your parameters you look for, especially as investors when you want to invest? Because agri-tech, sustainable agriculture, sustainable, people reach out to me for, obviously looking to explore investments in this space. So what are the main points that you take into consideration, especially during these times, like as Sanjay said, I was also in Davos this January. So coronavirus was already there, but people are talking different things. So because from the lessons learned, the lessons that you've learned so far in these last few months, what's your main points to take into consideration while investing into a startup in sustainability? It could be anything. What are your points?
Okay, so in a simple word, it is a sustainable advantage through a differentiated value proposition, in a simple word, right? But let me unpack that a bit. Let's talk about, for example, a rice player like Dawat Foods, for example. And we've imagined ourselves 5 years in the future. What could that future look like? And I'm on this basis, what I'm speaking about are hints of what some of the work we've been doing in some Southeast Asian countries, some of the technologies that are coming rapidly online and maturing in places like China and the US and Germany and so on. And just imagine from the field to the mouth, right? And then subsequently to maybe after that to the wallet as well. In the field, what kind of technologies could drive this? If you think about agri-foods, it could be certainly in Japan, one of the pieces of work that we had done was type technology, where they are looking at certainly the macronutrients, the micronutrients that are going to the soil. They have a hydroponic system where they are measuring temperature, the pH, the ammonia content, and things like that. So they finally optimize that using an AI layer. So you have IoT at the front end to sense all these variables. You have an AI layer to optimize it. And if you look at the use of technologies, for example, if you in the past you have remote monitoring using satellite imagery, for example, picking out soil patches, the fields, and different kind of hydration factors. You have IoT. You can use drones, for example. In China, we are seeing this where they're flying over vast distances for rice in order for them to figure out what the right irrigation patterns and channels and climate would be, climate sensors. So all of this is intended for what is two things. One, to drive down costs. Two, to drive up value. And what that value would translate into, if you think about what I said earlier regarding sustainable transformation, the way that the business model fundamentally works, for example, in many Southeast Asian countries, and probably in India as well, I'm not sure, there are layers and layers of middle people, from the smallholders all the way to the end consumer. In the middle, there are distributors, there are triads at play, and through all of these layers is layers of cost and waste. And lots of food is perished before they can even get to the table. Now, if you had different kinds of business, even operating models and business models, working with cooperatives, working with microfinance, helping microfinancing, say, farmers to be able to go to market more easily, setting up different kinds of logistics channels and different kinds of trade hubs, looking at how you can get to market, I think it is itself a great reduction of cost, reduction of waste. That benefits all parties. If you think about the product itself, having higher yield kinds of grains, we are looking at, for example, when we talk to some of our colleagues, some CEOs, the former CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman, and over here in Asia, I'm good friends with the regional CEO and the former regional CEO for Kimberly-Clark. What they tell me is that exactly like what Sanjay you're saying, you can get consumer choice, but you cannot command a price premium, right? That's whatever empirically they have observed so far. Now, I would argue that they can't command a price premium because the value proposition is essentially still similar. It is still a bag of rice wrapped in plastic that looks like the other bag of rice, except it might have a label there, right? Now, think of it another way. In Thailand, what we're doing, there are some startups that we've been mentoring, where the rice starts becoming a small packet, not the big 1 kilogram or 5 kilogram packet, a small packet, right? It's a different consumer because they understand that consumer tastes themselves are changing. People are working out, they're not cooking so much at home, right? It's millennials. Now, the packaging size is different. Again, there are economies there. Now, with that smaller packet, it's not a plastic wrap either, because even plastic is not sustainable. They use a cardboard, they use a nice packaging design of the brown kind of packaging, so it feels like it's another proposition. They use another kind of grain. There's rice now, high nutrition rice that's purple in color, so it's very different. It can be encoded with nutrients. All the nutritional information is there. You can scan your QR code. Blockchain is ready, so you can ensure that the hands that have touched it is verified. It tells a story. So the story is the story of the farmer that you're buying from, right? So for me as a consumer, I start having loyalties to that farmer because I feel I'm helping somebody. So my aspirational needs are being met now. You think about the entire transformation. The place we sell it may not be in the wet market. It might be in a high-end grocery store where maybe in Singapore's context, the expat population comes to buy. Another customer segment comes in altogether. You can start imagining what sustainable transformation means, right? It's all the way from the farm to the table. And subsequently, when you think about your question, Sunny, about blockchain in particular, we see that even from an investor standpoint, certainly while having come from the stock exchange, there is and I think will always have a place for commoditized products to be traded where liquidity is high and entry barriers are low, and there's a lot of trades going on. But at the same time, if many exchanges are also themselves looking into blockchain technologies, where this is from a capital market standpoint, where blockchain certainly just helps ease the cost of registration, of having a clearinghouse, settlement, margining, fees, and things like that. So when you put it on the distributed ledger, and if I say I'm selling to you and you are buying from me, it's on the ledger, right? So a lot of that is going to be taken care of. Is blockchain the complete answer? I would say not yet, because if you imagine, let's say, buy that from you, right? So we make an agreement, we stick on the blockchain, you deliver the product to me, I'm supposed to give the money to you. right? And we have all the records on blockchain, but somehow I fell out, right? So there is counterparty risk between us, right? And without a margining instrument, without settlement, how do you ensure that I'll actually, without a clearinghouse, for example, actually pass it over to you, right? So even with blockchain, it just simply means there's a record of it. May not mean I'm good for it, right? Nobody has come through to do an audit of my accounts. Nobody knows if I'm legit. Nobody knows if I'm actually going to deliver, and that's a challenge too. So I think what we were alluding to earlier about this ecosystem all hands approach is that all hands need to come in with all technologies and business model, operating model, design, marketing, value proposition, to such that you truly then can enjoy that value sustainable transformation. With that, we are in a position to talk about price premium, right? Not simply sticking on the label, even with all the tremendous efforts that many good people are taking to do traceability. That alone may not be the answer.
Right. Startups who are approaching us in the sustainability field, please make sure it's not only the technology that is the only point before investor can invest. Thank you so much, Kevin, for those points. Sanjay, I would like to ask you the same question, please.
Yes. So in fact, blockchain is something which is actually has a lot of relevance in agriculture, because traceability is something that we want to provide to the consumer, but it's very expensive. But if we are able to have a blockchain technology which is very reliable, then it will be easier for banks to open up to actually let the transaction pass through their systems. Because right now, banks are very, very, I would say, conservative in rightly so, in opening up their networks. And once that happens, that there is a far more saner system and far more surety of who is managing the entire information flow, then banks will be, I would say, more aggressive in letting this happen. And once that happens, we would actually be able to say, as one example Kevin was giving, that you can actually find out that which farmer has actually produced it, so that you don't have to print it on the product, because printing on the product is again costly and unsustainable. But if you have a QR code, then with your smartphone you can find out that where the beneficiary is there, or who is my producer. So tomorrow, if there is a problem, like there was a problem of bird flu a few years back in India, and a customer complained that, so we could not find out as to where the problem is. So that entire region and the few villages from where that chicken must have originated from, we had to cull lakhs and lakhs of birds. So millions of birds were culled because we could not find out that from which farm this problem has originated. So traceability has a big role, and technology will help. Just before this call, I was speaking to another technology startup, and that is Weather Risk Management Services. Again, it's such a great pleasure talking to you, Kevin. All that what you're saying is music to my ears, because you're making a strong case for it, and you are also dangling the carrot so strongly that we feel a lot more assured and reassured that all the investment that we are making, I mean, it will not be disastrous for companies, and it will definitely have a lot of fruits, sweet fruits, at the end of all this. And I must say that these kind of investments like Weather Risk Management Services, now what they're doing, they are bringing all those drones and those services that you're talking about, weather risk services. But then they ask me at the end of the day that whether the farmer will pay and whether you will pay. I said, how can we pay when we are already operating on a commodity brand at about $10, $20, or $50 per ton of profit? We don't have the kind of profit that maybe PepsiCo would have in their potato chips, or maybe some chili manufacturers or chili paste manufacturer has, because he's buying chilies. In our case, we are a commodity brand, and if we increase the price by $1, as Sony was saying that your price was also competitive. If our price wouldn't be competitive, nobody will buy it. So the customer will simply switch to somebody else. However brand loyalty we have, it is still a price sensitive product. So that makes it a lot more difficult for companies to invest into certain product categories. In certain product categories, they can. Coca-Cola can. But in certain product categories, it's difficult. So where it is difficult, their farmer has to, dip into their own pocket, because they are not ready to, take a lot more further cost if they are not sure whether there is a market for the additional cost that bringing in, whether there is a market for sustainable produce. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg story there. And to solve that problem, I would say that we have to begin somewhere, and we have to take some small baby steps. And technology definitely makes it easier for us to do this, because technology gets in some, right thinking people, new kind of people. With technology, we are able to retain the talent in the villages. And the farmer's son is also a farmer, but he's a far more progressive farmer and far more smart farmer, utilizing various technology. Just to give you an example, that we were using an age-old technology of rice, and 100 years we have taken, and we have not changed the way the rice is grown. And that is, we have all grown up saying that there will be a big puddle of water and there will be flooding in the field, and that's how the rice is grown. But Gretas don't like it, because there's so much of wastage of water, and the water is scarce. So how the countries were trying to solve the problem? So in India, in the state of Haryana, the government recognized that the water table is going down. They said, okay, you will not plant rice in the month of April. Okay, when should I do it? May? No, you will not plant even in the month of May. So then when do I plant? June? I want to plant on 1st of June. No, you cannot plant before 20th of June. So that means they shifted the entire sowing to 20th June or later, so that at least for 1.5 months, unnecessary water is not wasted. Right. So that the farmer is under pressure to deploy technology so that he's able to produce rice. And once the rice comes out, he gets a very small little window before the wheat sowing starts. And in that winter, he has to get rid of the stock, the straw which is standing in the field of rice straw. And earlier, maybe he was doing some other things for using that, either for cattle feed or something else. Now he says nothing doing. Cut the whole damn thing out and burn it. So when he burns it, it's already winter, and Delhi cries because it's smog all around. So we have solved one problem to create one more problem somewhere else. So the problem that we were trying to solve was water, and we created some other environmental problem. So to make the whole thing short, let us look at the water stewardship problem. How we can solve it? Can we solve it with the drip irrigation? Probably yes, probably no. Why no? Because the technology works, but the distribution of water is still in the hands of the government. So if the distribution is in the hand of government cannot be so efficient to say, okay, I give you opportunity to draw water tomorrow if you have not used it today. So if it is my turn today, so I will use all the water which is available, because tomorrow I'm not going to get the water, right? So when I was growing up in my earlier days, when I was a child in Haryana, fights over water was a very common sight. And it was so much so that every few months or few years, we used to hear that such big fights take place and people used to get murdered because they could not decide, whether this was my turn or it was your turn. And the government is not standing all the time to sort your problems. So they used to sort it out with a gun or with a stick. So now, when I went to Karnal recently again, I said, I grew up, and pardon me, few years I was not around. I was in Africa, I was in Middle East, I was in other places. I want to know that I don't hear about those fights anymore. So how is that you have solved those problems? He said, we have not solved the problem. So then how is that you don't fight as much? Why don't I hear it? Is it that the media is not reporting that? No, we don't fight it these days. Why don't you fight it? They said, earlier when we used to fight for water because we were totally dependent on the canal water. But now, as you know, that law in India says that if you have a piece of land, all the water below is yours. So you can pump as much you want. So to answer your question, Sony, so we use technology to pump as much water as much you want, and created another havoc of depleting the water table in Haryana. So to solve that problem, the government said don't sow it before 20th June, and we created another problem. So that means the problem is shifting. It's like in a new city, if you go, they created flyover, the traffic problem is gone, but problem has shifted to another flyover. You create another one, the problem is shifted somewhere else. Unless all the city has the flyovers, you cannot solve the problem, because problem simply moves place from one place to another place. So something similar is happening in our industry also. So what we have realized that we need to look at the holistic problem. If it is a water problem, then all of us have to come together, and we have to say, okay, which is the variety which will take less water? Okay, which is the technology which will reduce water intake? Okay, can I have a direct sowing of water, so I don't have to transplant and flood the whole field of rice, and have a direct sowing of rice? But to do that direct sowing of rice, I need to have that happy seeder. So if I don't have that technology of direct seeding, then I will not be able to do it. I'll go back to my 100-year-old way of doing it. So to have that technology, I need to have those happy seeders not coming from Japan, being produced in my own country in India. So if I have to bring that technology, that means I have to democratize the technology. Once the technology gets democratized, it becomes affordable. Then the farmer uses it. When he uses the farm, so he now uses less water. When he uses less water, then he uses other technology, because the faith gets built up, and there is a company to buy that kind of a produce. So it's not a very simple solution. It is the whole, as you said, you need a whole village to solve it. So I'm just trying to repeat your words. I like your speech very much, Kevin. I must say, clap for you. That it actually takes a village to solve a sustainability problem. One person, one company cannot solve it.
Yeah. I mean, we call it just a systems kind of approach. And when I started earlier, we were saying that why is it that for us, our practice, not only when we think about sustainability, it's about human systems, it's about ecological systems, it's about economic systems. It's because at the fundamental layer, if you choose, for example, Sunny's earlier question about blockchain, saying that we put things on blockchain, the reality is that many of the smallholder farmers are actually not so literate. So it comes into a human systems issue, right? We have to educate them, right? We have to, if you're talking about standards of produce that we're trying to sell something about, it's about quality assurance, it's about healthcare standards. So again, all the parties have to come together, and it's very fashionable in our space for people to do this thing called design thinking, where they are just coming up with the new technique or the new seeder, for example. But in reality, actually, when it comes to sustainability, we're seeing greater success only when you think about things really as a system. Now, for that one, earlier, Sanjay, you were talking about a challenge of who pays, right? This sort of chicken and egg issue. And I just wanted to perhaps bring up this trend that we're observing, which is that classically, we look at things from the corporates and say that, it should be the big Syngentas that should pay for it, or Coca-Colas that pay for it. But, for us, when we're advising them, oftentimes you're finding that the scale of the problem is simply way beyond what even they could afford. Think about doing a piece of work in, Indonesia, for example, not even to say India, right? When you have 70,000 islands, right? Millions and millions of farmers, they can go out, they set up reference farms, for example, and they do their training courses, they do credit programs. But at best, if you help 100,000 farmers, that's no mean feat at all. It's really admirable. But 100,000 farmers in the face of millions and millions of farmers is just a drop in the ocean. So what we're finding instead is that the companies are, as much as companies are pushing into venture accelerators, corporate venture type programs, as much as there are capital markets players coming through, like I mentioned earlier about ESG investors, impact investors coming through, sovereign wealth funds coming through, different kinds of accelerators coming through. One of the latest trends that we've been noticing for quite a number of years now is really the interesting role that the third sector has to play. I'm talking about venture philanthropy. I'm talking about non-profit organizations that come out and, for example, you're saying who's going to pay. Ultimately, if it's going to be the farmer that needs to pay for it, they're living hand to mouth, right? You and I know, and it's a savings issue. So you need to not only have microfinance and put them into micro loans, but micro savings programs. So they start saving up for something. They can work as a village, for example. You have different kinds of blended finance models that come about where philanthropy is helping to take on some of the risks of some of these investment classes. And that also helps for new flows of capital to come in. So what I'm quite excited about is to see that range of different kind of stakeholders, they're all starting to move in that same direction, which would release or unleash altogether new sources of funding that attend to the very same problems that I think we're also passionate about. And by the way, Sanjay, I love hearing your stories too.
No, actually, Kavan, I was about to say, Sanjay, the analogy that you gave, like solving one problem and creating another, especially Delhi, water problem solved, then you have the smoke problem. You know, it's something that very fascinating. I didn't know about that. Good to know all the stories, you know, but great points here, great insights from both of you. I don't know where to see. I mean, who could solve the problem? I think the startups, right? I mean, big enterprises, I don't think it's difficult to move them, right? So a startup in technology can probably speak to a farmer and also speaks as technology, right? So they can, and the investors. I think that's where they come into picture. What do you think about that? I mean,
yeah,
the startups.
very well. You know, you always need some rabbits in the room to increase the speed of everybody. So startups are those rabbits. If you introduce few rabbits, the whole society, the whole industry sort of picks up speed because they come out with new thoughts and new ideas, and we think that, oh my God, we were caught napping. You know, that's a wonderful idea. So ultimately, the big corporations, big companies, and the large majority has to do. So these startups, they bring wonderful ideas. Unfortunately, all of them do not reap the benefits of that. Industry sort of grows at their cost, but we need hundreds and millions of startups. And only the few smart ones actually go on to become the unicorns. And the rest are actually the great teachers for the rest of the industry. And I'm very happy, and also very happy to have a teacher like Kevin in my life, and I hope you will give me your telephone number, and I'll pick on your brain every now and then.
It's a delight to chat with you. Maybe I can add one last word about this startup question, and I would say that I absolutely agree that even many corporates that we're looking at are investing heavily in trying to work closely with startups to create internal startup cultures, to buy startups and what have you. But actually the issue that we are facing, and in some ways is the reason that consultants like us can stay alive, is the translation issue. Think about it for a minute. The startups that we are talking to, the kind of issues that they are concerned about are things like burn rate, fundraising, MVPs, going to market strategy, right? Think about what large corporations are concerned about, CEOs. It's about share price, it's about shareholder value, it's about quarterly reporting. Think about what governments are interested in. It's about national interest, it's about getting elected again as an official, right? Or if you think about, investors, it's about return on capital investor, it's about, also fundraising, it's about reporting, governance, compliance, and things like that. But at the end of the day, although the language that people are talking about are different, fundamentally, to me, it comes back down to value creation. Right? If you can create value through partnerships, through innovation, through products, through go-to-market strategy, through operating models and business models, that will make everybody happy, right? And as long as startups can learn to understand the perspectives of what a government, an investor, a corporation, what is it that they're looking for, there's tremendous alignment. And my greatest wish for any startup, social enterprise, or nonprofit is to see that they themselves actually create and represent tremendous value. Oftentimes, I see small companies not going to the large companies, and they feel when they're talking to them almost like a third-class citizen. Please, can you help me? There's a great loss of dignity. But when I shift shoes from the other perspective, when I'm advising governments and I'm advising corporates and so on, CEOs and so on, actually they need the startups, they need the ideas. So I think the idea is if we can all, with dignity, collaboration, and openness, see that there's value that all parties can bring to the table, and that we're all really going in that same direction of creating value through partnership, I think all much greater value can be created for all parties involved.
But for true partnership, you need a good convener like Sony to make it happen. Like we have been glued together like a good partner. But don't forget, it's because of Sony. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Conveners. Yeah.
My
absolutely.
pleasure. You guys made my day. Thank you so much. But Kevin, just wanted to add on to your point, value creation, collaboration with the big corporations, with the governments. Building that ecosystem is very important for a startup because they have the ideas to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Any last thoughts? I am the connector. Yes, I'm going to connect you both later on. We are having this little, kind of family discussion.
All I
basically-
want to say here, Sony and Kevin, that this is a journey which is going to be slow and it's going to be painful. Those who have very high expectations here and now, I mean, that is not something going to happen. Probably there will be even more degradation of environment for another 1 or 2 or 3 years, which I hate to admit because the solutions are not there on the table. But I would say that we have started. We have made a good progress. We have made the right journey. And if we continue on this, then everybody will join. Because as I said, all of us have a small piece to the puzzle. And one person cannot solve the puzzle. So the government is also having a very big piece amongst themselves. So we have to bring everybody together and we have to educate everybody. And please do not do those mistakes which we did earlier by creating another class of corporations or multinational companies who will do sustainability. As you yourself admitted, Kelvin, they cannot. So that means this time we will not make sustainability as a tool to defeat somebody. This will make sustainability as a tool to survive. That's it.
Beautiful,
Thank you so
beautiful.
much. Beautiful.
Yeah, if I can just say one word that I would love to leave you all with is the topic of leadership, right? In order for any of the change that we're hoping to happen, leadership needs to happen at all levels. And simply put, it's a big fancy word. Simply put, it's just the drive to take action. When for example, Sunny, when you reach out to us to say, let's come together, that's leadership. It needn't always be a grand president launching a big policy. It's about the entrepreneur who dares to pick up the phone and makes a call to a corporation. It's about an investor that dares to ask a hard question. It's about the technologist that dares to open a spreadsheet and talk about cash flow, for example. It's just these micro acts of leadership that I think will lead to this shared outcomes that we all are hoping for as well.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to, I think I spoke to you yesterday and you were, very excited to come here. And I was very excited to know that you are in Singapore as well. So thank you for attending this show on a Friday evening and on pre-eve of the National Day of Singapore. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, 55 years of, National Day. We're celebrating tomorrow, which is, I feel grand already. So on a closing note, I would like to say that thank you for your time again, and have a great weekend, all of you. Sorry, have a great weekend. You can actually watch our shows Monday to Friday and choose whatever you like to be part of, because we cover blockchain as a broad topic, but we have different industry sectors underneath. Sustainability is obviously a broad topic, but if you're interested in any other topic, we are happy to have you on board, because our startups are looking to connect with people like you. Thank you. After saying that, thank you so much again, and hope to see you again, and have a great night and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was a great
Thank
fun.
you.
Stay in touch.
Bye.
Bye.